I have to quickly take you to Parliament. It's been brewing with a lot of information, things that you should know. The latest being that the minority is calling on government to avoid delays in updating figures on coronavirus. They are demanding a timely 6-hour update, and they want governments to be more transparent in how the figures are churned out. The ranking member of the Health Committee, Kwabena Minta Akando, has been addressing the media in Parliament House. He says there are still complaints about inadequate PPEs. In fact, we just had that interview right here with community nurses who are saying they don't have PPEs. He's asking government to disclose how much PPEs it has imported beyond that's given by the JACMA and the Chinese government. Let's get to Parliament right now and speak to Joseph Opoku-Gakpo. Hello, Joseph.
Hello, Gifty.
Right, Joseph. A lot of things have been happening in Parliament today. It certainly tells on your face. Do give us an update on the demands being made by the minority as far as updating the coronavirus cases by government is concerned.
They are making a claim that they think to a certain extent government is deliberately hesitating in terms of detailing what exactly is going on and putting out the figures. And they've been specific that they say there's been instances when over a long duration the figures are not updated, and then all of a sudden the numbers are thrown in and the figures are huge. They say that that is out of place, and that their demand is that there should be a constant and an agreed on update when it comes to the cases, so that then any figures that come to the very central level, every 6 hours government goes ahead to put out those details and what exactly the figures are. They think that a transparent manner, as they're calling it, of churning out the figures will engender a lot more confidence in government measures and government's approach when it comes to dealing with the problem, and ensure that ordinary citizens are very much updated. Again, they're saying that they are not seeing any firm commitment on the part of government itself, apart from what international donors have done to support the state of Ghana when it comes to dealing with the problem. They say they are in doubt as to whether government has brought in any protective equipment on its own, and when it comes to stuff like nose masks and also the other needed protective equipment and also materials for healthcare personnel. All that they know is that China and also the JACMA Foundation are the ones who've donated. They don't have specific figures on how much government has procured. They would want to get those details as well. And then, in fact, particularly on the floor of Parliament earlier in the day, the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, made a demand that they would want to hear from the health minister on a broad range of issues, including meningitis and also the COVID-19, as far as our government's efforts to contain it is concerned. So they've been raising those concerns at various media briefings and also on the floor of Parliament earlier today. Gifty.
This is not the only thing that has happened. We're hoping to get some responses, but let me, before I even ask my second question, ask whether there has been a response by the minority to the concerns being raised about the transparency and the timing for the updates on coronavirus cases, as well as the PPEs especially. Has the majority responded?
Not yet. We gather that apart from the MPs who are in the chamber, in fact, they are dealing with the pre-tertiary education bill at the moment as a way to buy time, because simultaneously the Finance Committee of Parliament is meeting to consider a 1 billion IMF rapid response facility that government is seeking in order to help cushion the economy in the light of the COVID-19 impact on the general economy of the Republic. And so the Finance Committee is meeting. The chairman of the Finance Committee and as well as the chairman of the Health Committee is also a member of the Finance Committee. So those deliberations are ongoing, and once there is space, we'll get responses to the concerns that the minority has raised.
We come to the approval of Deputy Minister for Health, Oko Boye, Dr. Oko Boye. Give us an update. How did it go?
So this afternoon, the chairman of the Appointment Committee of Parliament, Jose Usu, laid a report of the committee from the vetting they did on Wednesday before MPs for approval, and the House went ahead to approve it. And so Dr. Oko Boye has now been approved as Deputy Minister for Health, pending his swearing in by the President, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. And even as the House approved it, there were comments from both the majority and the minority wishing him well and making the point that he is coming into the space at a very crucial time in Ghana's history when the nation is dealing with the problem of COVID-19. And Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, the North Tongue MP, made the point that they are wishing him all the necessary goodwill in order to bring on board his expertise and his knowledge to help the nation deal with the issue having to do with COVID-19. There was a conversation reviewing some of the responses that he gave when he appeared before the Appointment Committee of Parliament, including his request that there should be a situation where issues of accountability are dealt with when COVID-19 has been defeated. And Inusaf Hussaini, who is the Tamale Central MP, in contributing to the conversation on the floor, made the point that the Deputy Minister should be pushing for accountability now as much as he is pushing for more efforts to deal with COVID-19. So after more than an hour deliberation on the committee's report, eventually the approval was given, and Speaker Professor Michael Quay congratulated Dr. Oko Boye for his appointment as Deputy Minister for Health. He was in the chamber himself with all smiles, flanked by the Health Minister and other key officials, even as Parliament approved his nomination.
It must be. It looks like a smooth sail for him. Now, what a lot of Ghanaians are waiting is for his own contribution to our response to coronavirus. But Joseph, before I let you go, there's still a lot more interesting things that we can talk about. Politicization of the food being shared by the Gender and Social Protection Ministry is one of the big issues today that was discussed in Parliament.
Precisely. Not exactly in Parliament, except that it came up in the conversation on the floor of Parliament, even as MPs contributed to the agenda for the day, but a lot of it has played out right on the presence of Parliament. So I interviewed the Gender and Social Protection Minister, Madam Cynthia Morrison, earlier in the morning, and she was categorical in denying the claim that there's been situations where those who would want to get food have to show their party ID cards in order to get the food, as had been alleged by Dr. Zaneto Rawlings, who is the MP for Klotikole. And she made the point that when the ministry gets the food to the ground, it's handed over to the district assembly and also the National Disaster Management Organization for them to do the distribution. Politicians are not involved. And in fact, to quote her, she said that how can you fathom a situation where when food is being distributed and there is a lot of crowding and there are concerns about non-social distancing, there will be instances when anyone would demand a party card before handing over the food. But the minority MPs have also been addressing the media here in Parliament a while ago. About 10 of them have been taking turns to address the media on what they say is the situation in their constituencies and claiming that the distribution is being politicized, led by the Aswansi MP, Muntaka Mubarak, who is the minority chief whip. He says a similar situation is happening in his constituency. Also, the MP for Obum Domyabra, that Sophia Kwaku, said that she's had to confront the district assembly officials over this, and that it's happening with people who are distributing the food being NPP chairpersons as well as the parliamentary candidates of the NPP in the area. The Ashaman constituency and Esnogbe is making a similar allegation. The Odododio MP, Neil Antivanapoi, is making a similar claim. The Ayawaso North MP, Yusuf Jaja, is also backing the claim. And to crown the entire press conference, Dr. Zaneto Rawlings herself indicated that she stands by those allegations. And Muntaka Mubarak has also been reacting to what he says has been media attacks on Dr. Zaneto Rawlings for making the claim, citing comments by Paul Adumoche, which he says are in bad taste, and that they are petitioning the National Media Commission to take on Paul Adumoche for, in his words, virtually insulting Dr. Zanetto Rawlings for raising these issues. And so those have been some of the concerns that the minority MPs are raising right here in Parliament, that they think the distribution of food is being used as a grand scheme by the NPP and their candidates to bolster their popularity in the various constituencies. And Muntaka Mubarak says some of the parliamentary candidates get to the constituencies and claim that the government food is food that they are bringing to the constituents just so they look good and prepare the ground for themselves going into the 2020 elections. And he says that is completely out of place.
Looks like the worst of the minority against that of the majority certainly will be on the ground to check on this. Joseph, finally, the Interior Minister has also been responding to some concerns by members of Parliament about police officers and other lockdown security agents who are not allowing them free passage.
And so the MP for Ho Central, Benjamin Kudo, made a claim on the floor of Parliament complaining to the Speaker that in his efforts to get to Parliament earlier today, his movements were restricted and he had to be asked to return, and then he had to find alternative routes in order to get here because the security persons were refusing to permit him. He showed his ID card that he's an essential worker and reminded them that the president has exempted parliamentarians from the lockdown. But then he says that he was still prevented from getting to the House. And it wasn't just him, the likes of Nilante Vandapoy, the MP for Dododiodio, and a number of other MPs raised similar concerns. And Ambrose Derry, who is the Minister for Interior, responded and said that this is something that is out of place and that he apologized to the MPs for the situation and that he would go on and sit down with the security agencies so that then they allow MPs to pass. But the Speaker, Professor Michael Okoye, took the issue seriously and directed that the Clerk of Parliament officially engages the Inspector General of Police and reminds him of the President's exemption that was given to MPs, that they can step out there and get to work without being affected by the restrictions as have come into force by the imposition of the restrictions law to help ensure that COVID-19 doesn't actually spread.
I did say that was the final question, Joseph, but I just remember that I haven't asked you about Minority Chief Whip Muntaka Mubarak's response, I think, to the bribery allegations by the U.S. SEC.
And so that's also another conversation that's been happening today. Not just him, Adam Mutawakilu as well, who was actually Vice Chair of the Energy Committee of Parliament back in 2015, has also been making the claim that he's been very much involved in the energy space. He remembers that particular deal as it unfolded up until it was approved by Parliament, the AXA energy deal, which we all know now that the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission is claiming that bribes to the tune of $600,000 was actually paid to members of Parliament, actually $60,000 to some members of Parliament and also other government officials. Muntaka Mubarak, who was a member of the Energy Committee then and is now the Minority Chief Whip, Adam Mutawakilu, are making the claim that they don't know this gentleman in question, Asante Bekwe, to have actually taken any money from him, and they are backing any possible move when it comes to a parliamentary inquiry. But that's not the only issue Adam Mutawakilu, who is the minority spokesperson on energy, has been addressing. He's also been demanding that you recall that yesterday the energy minister, Peter Amewu, did direct that the National Petroleum Authority withdraws the payment of the margin that had been put on LPG since 1st April in order to support the cylinder recirculation model. He directed yesterday that those continuous payments be withdrawn. Adam Mutawakilu is making an additional demand that consumers have been paying that money since April 1 without the necessary parliamentary approval, and that beyond just the energy minister directing a withdrawal of that particular levy, a refund should happen to consumers. Otherwise, then they, the minority, would be taking on the various government agencies in that regard, and that government has no authority to spend the money that has accrued over the duration. So a lot has been happening here in Parliament. We are waiting at the moment for the report of the Finance Committee of Parliament on the $1 billion facility that government is getting from the IMF to cushion the economy against COVID-19. That Finance Committee meeting is happening, and that is likely to be done in the next few hours, after which the House will go ahead and approve that facility later tonight before the Speaker suspends sitting once again. Gifty.
Joseph, thank you so much for that update. Always detailed, always comprehensive. Thank you very much. Joseph Opoku there. He's our Parliamentary Affairs correspondent. They're joining us from Parliament. He's still standing by with more information from that Finance Committee meeting.